Hello, today I'm going to be reading chapter 28 of Takeout by Margaret Maron. While Tilly went to get a search warrant, Detective Gonzalez sprinted after Denny Caps. He used the restroom and then he asked where the nearest bus stop was. So maybe I can still catch him, he said. 10 minutes later, he was back with a thoroughly pissed Caps in tow. He was in line at the Sabret's wagon, Gonzalez said triumphantly. What's with you people? Caps complained. You dragged me down here before I could eat lunch at Martha's. Now you haul me in again before I can get a hot dog? We'll buy you 2 hot dogs, Sigurd said, reaching into the pocket of her white slacks, into her empty pocket. Hence grinned and handed her a 10. Just a few more questions, Mr. Caps. Your car, was it an automatic or a manual? Manual, he said promptly. The gears might have started to slip a little, but there was nothing wrong with it and that asshole shouldn't have scrapped it. Tell us again how you happened to lend your car to Matty Mouton. Caps rolled his eyes. What else is there to tell? He came into Martha's about noon that day. Said he needed a car in a hurry and offered me $40 to lend him mine. I gave him the keys and told him where it was parked. He was supposed to bring it back next day, but then, like I said, I got picked up and sent to Rikers. Did he say why he needed a car in such a hurry? I don't know. Something about having to pick somebody up in Midtown. He didn't say who. I thought maybe his girlfriend. Sigurd looked down at her notes. You told us that you got out Saturday before last and went looking for Matty. Where did you look and who did you talk to? He shrugged. I asked around. They told me at the soup kitchen that he was back on the street, back on speed, and he'd come in to eat there off and on. They also said that he had people up on Vanderbach across from that diner. Did you go to the house on Vanderbach? Didn't know which one it was, did I? But I asked about him at the diner, and one of the guys there said he knew Matty. I asked him if he'd seen him with my car. Get his name? Asked Hence. I don't remember. Al, maybe? Could it be Sal? Sal? Yeah, that's it. Little short guy, big head of hair. Said Matty didn't have a car, though. Did you describe it to him? Yeah, a white, 1988 white Honda Civic. Said he hadn't seen it. Hey, that why you asked if it was a manual? What do you mean? 'Cause that's what Sal asked. Said Matty wasn't good with manuals. Sigurd glanced at the timeline again. What day was this? Last Tuesday morning. I stopped in for coffee. Did you go to the house then? Talk to the housekeeper or the woman who was Matty's godmother? Godmother? He shook his head. When this Sal and Matty didn't have my car, and he hadn't seen him in a couple of weeks, I decided to wait till he showed up at Martha's table again. Thank you, Mr. Caps, Sigurd said, and handed him Hence's 10. Enjoy your lunch. I'm sorry, Dr. Bohr, said Miss Bales, but Mr. Livingston's at lunch right now. May I take a message? We seemed in such a rush that I shepherded the DNA samples through the testing myself. Tell him there's no doubt in my mind that we have a perfect match. So Vincent Haas really is Oscar Newman's natural son? There was a long silence. Perhaps you should have Mr. Livingston call me, said Dr. Bohr, and gave her his personal number. The first thing Sophia Del Vico noticed upon leaving Charlotte Randolph's house were 2 police cars parked in front of her own house and a small knot of curious onlookers across the street. The second was her granddaughter Laura, who broke into a run toward her as soon as she saw Sophia, her pretty young face twisted in a mixture of fear and anger. Nana, where were you? Come quick. What's wrong? She asked, alarmed. The police are tearing the house apart. I tried to make them wait till I could call Dad, but they wouldn't. He's on his way, but it'll be another 30 minutes before he can get here. What are they looking for? They won't say, and they're going to arrest Orla if she doesn't get out of the way so they can search your room. Crintina, Sophia murmured, and hurried down the sidewalk. As she entered her house, a uniformed officer came down the stairs with a firm hold on Miss Orlando's arm. Her housekeeper was struggling and cursing him in Italian. Basta, Orla, Sophia said sternly. Signora, Orla cried, and burst into tearful Italian. In English, Orla. They're going through your room, opening drawers, touching your things. How can they do this? Can't Mr. George make them go away? Sophia looked up the stairs and saw Sigurd on the landing. Lieutenant Harold, what's happening? I'm sorry, she said, but we do have a search warrant. Then tell me what you're looking for so we can end this. That bottle of Comedin you stopped taking last winter. Sigurd motioned for the officer to let go of Miss Orlando. It's the same formulation that killed your godson and the other man. Released, the old woman hobbled over to her employer. It's not here. I have remembered for sure. I did throw it away, just after Christmas. Then there's nothing to worry about, is there? Sigurd said. Number 409 was a 3-story house. Even with her whole team searching, there were so many places in which to conceal a small pill bottle that George Edwards made it in from Riverhead about 10 minutes before they found it. Empty. Where was it? Sigurd asked when Dinah Urbanska brought her the little orange plastic bottle. In the toe of a shoe in her closet. Whose closet? Urbanska nodded toward the housekeeper. Miss Orlando's. Orla, said George Edwards. The elderly woman shook her head, and tears streamed down her wrinkled face, her bushy gray eyebrows drawn together in misery. It was still in her medicine cabinet when you came asking for it last week, she told Sigurd. I hid it so you would not think she was the one who poisoned Maddie's food. Why would I think that, Miss Orlando? Because of Aria. George Edwards' head swung around sharply. What? His acne-scarred face was furrowed with surprise. His daughter seemed equally bewildered. Orla, what do you mean? How does Mother have anything to do with this? Orla, Sofia Del Vico's voice cut through the other voices like a whiplash. Dimmi la verita. La verita, Orla whimpered. La verita es Maddie. Okay, I'm not even gonna try to say that because I've probably already butchered it enough. So it was only like one line of Italian, so I'll skip to the next line just to spare you all and myself. In English, Orla, now. Wait a minute, Sophia, said George Edwards. Orla, as your attorney, I'm advising you to say nothing more. As you wish, Sigurd said. Where's Mr. Salvador? Sal? Why do you want him? He and Miss Orlando were, by their own statements, the only two to touch the takeout carton from Guis Ponies. She served herself and Ms. Delvicio from it out here in the kitchen, and Mr. Salvador was the one who took it to Maddie. I'd like to hear what he has to say. I think he's in the kitchen, said Laura Edwards. I'll get him, said Detective Hentz, and went down the hallway. Sigurd followed. We'll question him out there. I'll come too, said Edwards. Are you representing him as well? And anybody else in this house who needs me, Lieutenant? Sophia Delvicio, Laura Edwards, and a distraught Orla were told to wait in the living room under Dinah Urbanska's watchful eyes. The handyman sat at the table and looked up apprehensively as Sigurd and her team entered and closed the door to the hallway. He had been weeding the flower beds when Orla warned him that the police were there. His shaggy pepper and salt hair was damp from the heat, and sweat dampened the back of his dark green coveralls as well. His grass-stained hands left dirty marks on the glass of ice water on the table before him. "What's going on, Mr. George?" "They have more questions, Sal. But if it's something you shouldn't answer, I'll tell you." Sigurd took the chair across from him, and hence sat down next to her with his notepad and tape recorder. "Mr. Salvador, we were told that when you were in the diner last week, someone came in looking for Matty, and you said you knew him. Is that correct?" "Yes," he admitted cautiously. "Why?" "Did you two talk?" "Yeah. Why?" "About what?" "He said he'd let Matty use his car back before Christmas, and did I know where it was?" "And did you?" "No. Last time I saw Matty, he was pushing a grocery cart. No car. Then when the guy told me what kind of car it was, I said Matty wouldn't keep it. He never really got the hang of a shift stick. Stalled it out every time. As for where the car was, I told him Matty'd been back on drugs for the last 6 months, and probably couldn't remember that far back. And then," Sal shrugged, "then nothing. The guy said he'd try to catch up with Matty at the soup kitchen, and left." He pulled a paper napkin from the holder on the table and wiped the mud from his glass. "Did you repeat that conversation to anybody else?" Sal shook his head and finished drinking his ice water. "You're sure?" "Come to think of it, I might have told Orla. It was funny that Matty would borrow a car he'd have a lot of trouble driving. And when did you tell her this?" "Last Tuesday, round lunchtime. I remember because she said she'd run into Matty that morning. When he saw her, he started crying again, still blaming himself for Miss Area. He gave the lawyer a sympathetic look. Sorry, Mr. George, but you know how he was always going on about how he should have been driving her on that day." "Yes, Sal." Edwards had loosened his tie and now ran a handkerchief across his homely, pock-marked face. His voice was sad. "I know." "And what did she say when you told her about the car?" Sigurd asked. Sal shrugged. "Nothing. She was unloading the dishwasher, and all of a sudden a plate slipped out of her hand and smashed all over the floor. So after that we were cleaning up glass. First time I ever saw her break anything. That evening you were the one who went to Giuspani's for takeouts, right?" He nodded. "Just like every Tuesday. Chicken or veal for me and a double order of some sort of pasta for Ms. D and Orla, so that there'd be enough to send down for Matty too. I had the chicken parmigiana last Tuesday, and they had fettuccine. Did you eat your supper here in the kitchen?" "No, I took it downstairs to watch television. I didn't come back up till Orla called me. She was supposed to take the carton down to Matty, but her arthritis was bothering her so much she asked me to do it, and I did. But like I told you people, Matty wasn't there yet, just the other guy, eating lasagna. So I left the box with him. And? And what? That was it. I came back here." "Did you look back before you turned the corner?" "Oh yeah, that's right. I saw him opening our box." "Even though you'd made it clear that the food was for Matty?" I didn't think it really mattered. A lot of times, Matty never even came." "Thank you, Mr. Salvador. One of my officers will transcribe this conversation and will need you to stop by and sign it tomorrow." Sal looked up at the lawyer. "Okay for me to do that, Mr. George?" "Yeah, Sal." He exhaled deeply, almost as if he hadn't breathed for the last 5 minutes. "I suppose you'll want to question Orla now, Lieutenant." Sigurd nodded. "And I suppose you'll advise her not to answer?" But they were too late. "I tried to tell her not to speak," Urbanska said, "but she wasn't under arrest and I couldn't Mirandize her, and once she started talking she wouldn't stop." All three of the women seemed traumatized. Miss Delvicho was white-faced, Miss Orlando looked shattered, and Laura Edward burst into tears as she rushed into her father's arms. Maddie was the one who ran over Mother, she sobbed, and Orla poisoned him for it. She should have told me, said Miss Delvicho, and I would have done it myself. I don't care what it takes, George. You cannot let Orla go to prison. We'll start with bail and go from there, he said as Lori stepped forward with handcuffs. Are those really necessary? Lori looked at Sigrid. Lieutenant, no handcuffs, she said. Just read her rights. And that is the end of chapter 28, and I will see you all again. And as always, have a wonderful day.